Picture this: 10 million years before the first human ever brewed a drop of beer, before writing existed, before agriculture, before we even walked upright the way we do today, our ancestors were already encountering alcohol, not drinking it on purpose, not fermenting anything, just stumbling into it, accidentally, through the food they ate every single day. Here's something that might surprise you. The relationship between humans and alcohol isn't a story that begins with civilization. It begins millions of years earlier, buried inside the evolutionary history of our own bodies. So when did ancient humans really start drinking alcohol? The honest answer is stranger and far older than you'd expect. In the 1990s, biologist Robert Dudley proposed an idea that completely reshaped how we think about humanity's relationship with alcohol. He called it the Drunken Monkey Hypothesis. Here's the basic idea. Ripe, overripe fruit naturally ferments. Wild yeast in the environment breaks down the sugars inside fallen fruit, producing small amounts of ethanol as a byproduct. Our primate ancestors, the ones who ate fruit off the forest floor for survival, were almost certainly consuming small amounts of alcohol without knowing it, simply by eating their normal diet. Dudley's theory suggests this wasn't rare or occasional. It happened constantly, for millions of years, every single time a fruit-eating primate found food that had been sitting on the ground a little too long. And here's where the story gets genuinely fascinating. In 2014, researchers studying human and primate DNA discovered something remarkable. Roughly 10 million years ago, a single genetic mutation appeared in the ancestor we share with gorillas and chimpanzees. This mutation altered an enzyme called ADH4, the enzyme responsible for breaking down ethanol in the body. After this mutation, that ancestor's ability to metabolize alcohol became roughly 40 times more efficient than before. This wasn't a random, meaningless change. Researchers believe this mutation appeared right around the time our ancestors shifted from living primarily in trees to spending more time on the forest floor, exactly where fermenting fruit would have been most common. In evolutionary terms, this looks like natural selection, actively favoring individuals who could handle alcohol better. Now let's fast forward past evolution into actual archaeological evidence. For decades, historians assumed alcohol production began alongside agriculture, somewhere around 8 to 10,000 years ago. Then, in a cave in northern Israel called Raqefet Cave, archaeologists found something that broke that timeline completely. Stone mortars showed clear residue of fermented barley and wheat, dated to roughly 13,000 years ago. That's before agriculture as we know it existed. These were hunter-gatherers, not farmers, deliberately producing something very close to beer, likely for ritual feasts tied to burial ceremonies. This discovery suggested something genuinely surprising to archaeologists. May have figured out how to brew alcohol before they figured out how to reliably grow food. This discovery helped fuel one of the most genuinely debated ideas in archaeology, the beer before bread hypothesis. The traditional story of agriculture goes like this. Humans settled down, started farming grains, and used those grains to bake bread, with beer coming along later as a convenient side effect. But some researchers now argue the order might be reversed. If hunter-gatherers were already brewing fermented grain beverages before formal farming existed, it's possible the desire for a reliable, repeatable source of alcohol was one of the actual motivations to start deliberately cultivating grain in the first place, not bread alone. This remains hotly debated among archaeologists, but the evidence from sites like Raqefet Cave makes it a serious, scientifically credible question, not just a fun bar trivia fact. Once agriculture and early civilization did take hold, alcohol didn't stay a casual byproduct. It became central to power, religion, and daily survival. In ancient Sumer, beer was so fundamental that it appeared in religious hymns, including one dedicated entirely to Ninkasi, the goddess of beer, which doubled as one of the world's oldest known beer recipes. In ancient Egypt, beer wasn't a luxury. It was a basic food staple, consumed daily by nearly everyone, including children, partly because it was often safer to drink than untreated water. And here's a detail that surprises most people. Archaeological and textual evidence suggests the workers who built the pyramids at Giza were partially paid in beer, alongside bread, as a standard daily wage. So why did alcohol spread so successfully and so consistently across nearly every ancient culture studied? Researchers in evolutionary psychology and anthropology point to a specific social effect. In small, careful doses, alcohol lowers social inhibition. It reduces the instinctive caution humans feel around unfamiliar people, making cooperation, trust, and bonding easier to establish quickly. In early human groups, where survival depended heavily on cooperation between unrelated individuals, this effect may have offered a genuine evolutionary advantage. Shared drinking rituals appear independently in cultures with no historical contact with each other, from ancient China to Mesoamerica to Africa, suggesting this wasn't cultural coincidence. It may be a deeply rooted human behavior, one that uses a biochemical shortcut to build the social trust that cooperative survival has always required. So when did ancient humans start drinking alcohol? If we're being precise, they probably never really started at all. Our distant ancestors were already accidentally consuming it for millions of years before anyone intentionally produced a single drop. Evolution quietly rewired our bodies to handle it better, long before agriculture, long before writing, long before anything we'd recognize as civilization. By the time humans were deliberately brewing beer in caves 13,000 years ago, alcohol wasn't a new invention. It was the continuation of a relationship that had already been running in the background of our biology for millions of years. We didn't discover alcohol. In a very real sense, alcohol had already been part of us, long before we ever knew it existed.